Hello, I am Lindsay Burns. I am a grassroots marketing specialist, been building culture since the late 90s. In action sports and music, I ran marketing for Thrasher, Juxtaposed magazines, and Coachella. And now I'm a commercial photographer, fine art photographer, and I consult with brands to help them bring their Web3 strategy to life, and most recently, Ticketmaster. Today, we are here discussing how blockchain technology, Web3, can help us unlock utility and blur the lines between physical and digital. So I wanted to pass, well, you have your own mics. I wanted to let you all introduce yourselves and your businesses.
So guys, my name's DeShone Kizer, go by DK. Former NFL quarterback, turned founder of a company called One of None, and we're an authentication platform for art, fashion, and collectibles.
Tom McLeod spent years in music 20 years ago, then moved into web, and then into mobile, then to physical storage, and then that led me to Arkive, which is building a distributed museum all over the world, focusing on tier 1 art and collectibles out in public spaces that individuals can invest and own.
GM, everybody. I'm Fonz. I'm the founder and CEO at Tokenproof, and we're building infrastructure to unlock the utility of tokens, especially in the real world.
GM. So first I want to get each of you to answer why build your companies in Web3 and not Web2? Specifically, how do NFTs and tokenization play a role in the convergence of physical and digital goods? Who wants to take it?
You go for it. I'll draft off of your lead.
Perfect. I think one of the main concepts that got me excited about building Web3 was the concept of portable status. You know, I'm a sneakerhead. I had the privilege of signing with Michael Jordan's footwear brand when I was in the league. So I got every pair of J's that came out. And if you're a sneakerhead and you walk in a room and you have, some grailed items on, quickly the local sneakerheads can obviously see that. That's in a way, bringing that status along with you. So the concept of being able to build something on, blockchain and be able to port that, status from, one of the platforms that you're able to, kind of gain that status on into another environment became something that became very interesting as we thought about taking collectibles and grailed items and trying to enhance that experience for the collector experience.
For us, it's a lot of the same pieces of that. Largely the idea focused on right now when you own something, when you have it, a lot of times it comes down to simply a piece of paper. It's like a certificate of authenticity. It's a concept of how many people have seen this at some museum at some point. And it's just word of mouth over, in some cases, hundreds of years, certainly decades in tier 1 art, saying that this piece was on display at this location, at this time, curated by these individuals, so it matters, right? And that can be largely fibbed, that can be changed, that could be database records updated all over the place. So the idea that we could transport a lot of that, broad-based provenance, authentication, and actually figure out provable ways to prove that these items continue to exist at any given time, and the individuals who have partaken, seen, voted, curated, and come together to put those out in the world, that's a revolution in the terms of the way the art industry works, collectibles, and every other piece. So we saw that was the wedge that in every other space there could be human interactions that change the likelihood of it being true. When you put it on chain, it's immutable. It can't be changed. We know that this happened. These people came together, and this event occurred, and that allows us to create better provenance and more believable objects of history.
So for us, Tokenproof has a peculiar story, and we built it specifically for Web3 use cases. But before we built Tokenproof, the technology was built in another startup that we pivoted from, and it was used for COVID credentials or digital health certificates so that you could prove to the world that you were COVID-free in order to board a plane or go to a concert or go to a restaurant or a bar. And we hate the word vaccine passports, but that was sort of the intent early in 2020. And we failed at it, but we built the technology. Then I came into Web3 just out of curiosity and just through my personal journey being a collector. And I went to the first Ape Fest after buying my Bored Ape. And I noticed that Yuga Labs was using Google Sheets to check people in at the door at that first iteration of Ape Fest. And it didn't fully click at the time, but I knew that there was something better that could be done. And then at some point somebody tweeted, does anybody know is anybody thinking about how to prove that I own an NFT using QR codes? And that was like the light bulb moment. And I realized that we had built the technology for COVID, and that's when we pivoted immediately. And then, what we're doing is allowing individuals to prove that they own these crypto tokens in order to unlock real utility in the real world by showing a QR code that is cryptographically signed, and really allowing brands to build experiences into the token.
I'm so excited to be here with you all.
But please don't call it digital.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. Not doing that. Does it say that anywhere? It does. Okay, where was I? Let's just, Tom.
Yes.
That's you. The traditional art world is being disrupted. That's just undeniable. With AI, the rise of digital art, not just in the commercial world, but now creeping into the fine art world through Christie's, Sotheby's, fine art galleries. How do you see Arkive impacting the art world? And what new opportunities do you see emerging for artists, collectors, and investors in both physical and digital?
Yeah, that's a mouthful. There's a lot of pieces there that I think we touch on. Out of the gate, I think there's a layer of transparency that we bring to that process. Right now, it's relatively well gate kept. Which is both a feature and a bug, right? So capital in your bank account doesn't necessarily translate into your ability to purchase art, certainly from tier 1 art galleries, right? It's provenance, it's how long you've done, how other people you've collected, how many shows have you attended, do you support the artist? In some cases, did you take the artist out to dinner? There's all these different things that occur there to get into that level, and no one really knows 100% how it works because it's a lot of relationship building and consistent over time accumulation of basically viable clout that you can then turn into access to opportunities. We're functionally doing that at scale, where we're taking the entire community, the access that the community has, the individuals who are members, what they have the ability to offer, who they know, what they have access to, and using capital behind them to sort of bring that access to a much larger group of people. And the way we like it is because we participate in the same ecosystem. So the things that artists love and that artists want are more people to see their work. They want it to get out in public spaces. They want people to interact and be a part of it. They want to be lifted up, right? They want to be able to tell their story through the art, and they want to have some degree of context put around why does this matter. So those are things museums have done historically very well for a very long time in a relatively opaque manner. You enter a building, you don't really know necessarily who was the curatorial team, who did this, why this is important. Then they spend some time telling you that, then you exit. In our world, we think about the placement of the items can tell part of the story because we don't have a physical location. The story of why it was curated is public and put on chain and out in the entire history of where it comes together. And you have thousands of people in the membership of the company and of the community that are basically telling the story of the art and retelling the story that the artists come to tell them to tens of other people, right? So you get this size of scale that can occur very quickly. And I think for us, that's the big part. Usually these things are happening in small groups and text messages and at dinner at different art basels and freezes. In this case, it can happen in Discords and public and on-chain with voting. And so we think that's what we're bringing. I don't know if it's a disruption per se, but it's definitely adding a new layer by which you can actually understand what's going on for, I think, a more digestible section of individuals. So if you're culturally curious, it's kind of a perfect place to spend some time.
Yeah, I don't think it's a disruption, but I think the traditional art world might think it is.
You know, we love museums, we love artists. I think we can support both.
Yes, and DK, I wanted to ask you, how do you envision the convergence of physical and digital goods impacting industries and consumers in the coming years? And can you provide some examples with what you're doing and how it's already happening maybe in some brands that you love? I kind of want to just hear about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I think it's important to address that physical digital twinning is something that has been developed way before blockchain. Obviously, IoT was something that was first coined in the late 90s, and the focus at the time was obviously trying to track products with more of a sustainable mindset. And I think that what NFTs would allow us to do was to start to think about the products that actually appreciate over time. You think of the resale as a service businesses that are out there today. A lot of those focus in on taking, PacSun's pre-loved products or Lululemon's pre-loved products and allowing those products to have a life after the initial, purchase. Now, as we've kind of shown the scarcity model within NFTs, now we're trying to bring this, blockchain element. I think that now there's this new focus on, okay, what about the products that do appreciate over time? How can we allow for the brand, for the original creator to stay connected to those? And I think that with the development of NFC technology and starting to put chips inside things, that becomes kind of a hardware element that allows us to connect into kind of the digital life that we're creating for those goods. And I think that ultimately, as we think about our grailed items, our most collectible pieces, our watches, our art, I don't see a world in the next 5 to 10 years that doesn't have some sort of a digital counterpart. As he was mentioning, the piece of paper in the box that comes along with your watch shouldn't be the way that you allow a secondary exchange to be able to authenticate the product. We have obviously technology that allows you to do that at a much higher scale. And for us, we think that working with the brands to launch new goods is the best way to kind of enter into that space. And the reason for that is, one, on the authentication side, rather than having a huge bunch of resources and experts to be able to look at these goods, to be able to actually authenticate them, by launching them new, we can be there at inception, place chips inside of them, build kind of these digital passports and these digital IDs that go alongside the product. And the second piece is the concept of essentially creating a permissions layer through the digital side of the contract, using a smart contract to either allow for that product to be exchanged anywhere within the metaverse, or start to whitelist and blacklist different platforms, and ultimately promote for the brands that create these grailed items to start to own their own resale channels.
Dang, I like it. I like it. Fonz, I want to come back over to you and talk about Tokenproof a bit. In the early stages of Tokenproof, everyone thought that it was a ticketing company, myself included. However, was that what you thought Tokenproof was going to be? What would you call it now? I know that we kind of touched on that. Do you know exactly where you're headed with it?
No. No, actually, I mean, we do have a pretty clear idea as to what we want to do, but originally we built the first use case around event ticketing, right? It was low-hanging fruit. It was definitely a gap that we saw in the space. And a lot of people started calling us the Ticketmaster of Web3. And I don't think that's the only thing that we do. There is a ticketing component, and Tokenproof has been used to power over 300 Web3 events in the last year. But there's really an element of experiences in this app, this platform, that if you have any NFTs or crypto tokens, you should have this on your phone, because at some point it's going to unlock a door that you probably didn't even know that it existed, right? And so there's the concept of ticketing, but now, for example, we launched a very big partnership with Adidas, and a couple weeks ago at NFT NYC, people went to the Adidas event, and when they checked in, they were airdropped a 20% off coupon within the Tokenproof app that you could redeem in store, right? So it's another type of experience, and it's another type of use case where, because you own a certain crypto token, you now have this personalized offer delivered to you that you could redeem either online or in the real world. And there's also an element of the portability of identity that I think is super important, because now that you have your different wallets linked to Tokenproof, you can go and use these at different gates, right? And so 2 nights ago, we launched the first ever token-gated sneaker drop with Adidas, to where you would link your wallet to the Adidas app using Tokenproof. So it's being able to have this portable identity on your phone that you can prove wherever you go in order to unlock some sort of experience, some sort of benefit. And so it's way broader than just ticketing, right? But ticketing was sort of our Trojan horse to put us on the map.
Can I jump off of that for a second?
I'd love you to.
I think when you look at what one of us is all saying, I think we're all kind of saying that there's some level of experience that comes with on-chain that exits out into the real world, and that probably captures the next 6 billion users, right? And so what we've been focusing on largely in all these products and services is that maybe there was 10 years of crypto tokenization and speculation, and that fueled a market that got people interested. capital was coming in, capital was going out, people are making money. That's always going to bring people in. But that didn't bring everyone in. There's a bunch of people who feel like they missed out. They didn't understand what was going on. Maybe they came in 2 years ago through NFTs and art, and they were like, art's the way I'm going to come in. I heard about crypto through art and collecting, and I've always done this. And then they were sort of like, oh, there's still people speculating. There's still people just using this from a monetary perspective. What I really wanted was to support the art, or I wanted to go see an event, or I wanted all the things that came with the community side of it, that when I went to a function, I got to feel something and a part of things. I think people are consistently always looking to feel a part of stuff, and most of the time, I mean, I was in IRC chat rooms 22 years ago. Like, I know what it's like to be online and connected. You tend to, at some point, want to sort of feel people out in the real world. You want to have these experiences. You want to see them do other pieces. And I think that's what we're all trying to do and unlock with a lot of the things we're building, whether that's IRL collections, meeting those collectors in real places, understanding why what you have is important, whether it's going out and supporting artists, seeing museums, being in different places. What does that feel like? Whether it's using token proof to actually go to those places and unlocking the fact that you are who you say you were the person from the place that we talked about. That's all coming together, and I think that's where you have to move. I think that's the big push, is that the next wave of crypto, the next wave of tokenization is a lot about identity and items in the real world, because that's where we all still are. It's still a big part of it.
And what you really unlock is this human connection in the real world, right? Which is very important. We can't just keep what we're doing just inside of the online realm, right? And so there's a thread that unites us, which is the tokens that we own and the communities that we're a part of, but you really need to hang out in the real world. It's very important for human connection.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that all the time, and I was thinking about this panel and you know, the through line between what you all are doing, and you know, reimagining just kept popping into my head, just that word. And you know, I wanted to actually throw back to you, Tom, you know, and just say, community is the big thing that I hear, and DK, you know, some exclusivity with these limited drops and Fonz access and unlock. And so I kind of wanted to hear from each one of you, and starting with Tom, how do you view, you know, community? And how do you balance exclusivity, you know, when you're building, you know, artists and kind of using that as a marketing tool, because it is. Exclusivity is a marketing tool, you know, within a broader sense. But what do you think the Web3, the WAGMI way is there, and how do you balance the two, exclusivity and also the human connection and bringing everyone in?
Sure. So, I mean, for us, you know, with Arkive, we started with 20 people. Most of them I knew. I texted them, and I knew there were folks who liked to go to art shows, or they liked to collect trading cards or vintage pieces of ephemera, whatever that looked like. I knew they were broadly culturally curious individuals. I had this idea. I was like, let's get together. I think we can build something pretty cool. Invite 5 people you know that match that same criteria. So it was organic. It was, do you know someone that you would want to sit in a room with and talk about these things? Let's bring them in, because they would probably want to meet new people and cross those spectra. What we found pretty quickly is the art folks wanted to learn about vintage cars, and the vintage cars folks wanted to learn about watches, and the watches people wanted to learn about rare books. And you would suddenly figure out that the fact that people all were sort of innately in this community tied to broad-based like education and collecting, and the history around those two and how they played together, was a pretty good bulwark that you could build a community against. Even if you didn't 100% know every single one of them, you were curious to find out, like, well, why does this market do this? Or you'd share some story about how this is how a friend acquired this piece of art, and someone would be like, that's wild. That's kind of the same way so-and-so was able to acquire this book. And you'd realize that these people were very similar in the way that these came together. Then it became a level of, well, how do you actually, for lack of a better word, productize that? What's the system by which you continue to create engagement? I think I spent a long time in mobile and what mobile growth looks like. And the edge for mobile was when mobile tipped was that you were actually using the features of a phone. So just replicating what happened in Web 1 and putting it onto mobile didn't make anything stick. It was, did you use GPS? Did you check in somewhere? Did you use the fact that there was a map? Did you use the camera? When you look at all the major apps that came out of mobile, they touched 1 or 2 of those features. What we said is, well, we can use voting, because that's forever on chain, that's new. That's a system that is byproduct of Web3 that no one else could have. You could vote before, but it couldn't be erased. It could always be changed, it had confusion. It was actually signing your name forever on it. Suddenly you also had this ability to look at fractionalization and sharing. So when you put this all together, it was very easy to say, well, we all came together to make this decision. We could do it very fast. We could put up those systems. And then you can start to actually track engagement. So that's a thing that you could suddenly say, well, if you participate more than someone else, this gives you a way to kind of grow within the community or decrease within the community based upon systems and weighting and all kinds of formula. So we worked on all of those, that you could actually start to say, this is the type of individual that stays, and then focused on bringing more and more and more and more of those folks in. And so that's been the large process for us for thinking about community, which is just like align incentivization structures that maximize for the outcomes that you're looking for. And in our case, it was looking for individuals that gave a shit, right? They gave us stuff about the things that we're talking about and the time that they were spending. And that's been the focus. And then you can build off of that. So for us, community was the flagpole. For other people, the art might have been the flagpole. For other people, access might be the flagpole. Those are all things, but you got to start somewhere to create a flywheel. And that's how products and services get built. For us, it was community first.
Who wants to go next?
I think we usually gravitate to other humans that have certain things in common with us, right? And so when you have digital ownership of this thing that we have in common, or I have in common with somebody else, whether it's a Bored Ape or a fine art piece on the blockchain, it creates a more meaningful relationship, right? And so, I mean, it's being part of a club, being part of this group, that there's always this thread that links people together. And so I think that is I don't think we would be, anybody in this room would be here without that strong element of community.
I love that you said that. I was thinking about when I was little and everything was a club. It was just like, I'm gonna make a club for this. We're Treehouse Club. You know, and it's never gone away, really.
Also, I mean, I think the perk of crypto and like having spent 10 years at some level touching it, being a part of it, is it just moves really fast, right? So like crypto goes through cycles. It basically speed ran the art world in 23 months. Like it tried everything that the art world had tried very quickly. It's done the same thing for community, right? And so even what you're saying, I actually don't think necessarily everyone having a Bored Ape meant that they should have all been together. It was the people who chose to keep it that was the underlying thing that mattered. It was like, this is actually an identity I want to continue to maintain. If you joined FWB early, it was probably because you liked EDM DJs in Los Angeles. It grew into a lot more. If you still are in the Discord right now, it's because you like what's continuing to happen. So there's something about remaining, and that the community is evolving in the way that the people that it cares about gels. And I think that's the first learning that came out of sort of DAO structures in that DAO 1.0 phase, was it started with, could you afford to be a member? Wasn't necessarily the greatest gatekeep, but could you afford to stay a member, and is value being derived is where people are starting to lock in now. And I think that ties to what do you experience in the real world.
Yeah, I think that there's a piece to add on top of the concept of remaining is remaining within a branded experience. Yeah. And I think that that's something that Web3 allowed us to see, is by being able to track a digital asset from the primary market into the secondary market. If you buy that product in the secondary market, you still get to come have a conversation with you in a Discord. I think that in the physical world, you know, and within drop culture, there's a lot of storytelling and a lot of community building from the brand up until retail. And then at the point of retail, this all gets, you know, siloed off into 3 or 4 different platforms, in which a lot of the community building and the resale happens within those platforms. As a sneakerhead, I spent, you know, 10 times more time on StockX than I did on the sneakers app itself, knowing that that's probably where I'm actually going to, you know, get the product. So the concept of being able to maintain that relationship with the original brand and feel like you're still part of something that is, you know, a branded experience becomes, you know, important in terms of the physical digital twinning space.
And Sneakers app is an incredible, like almost a perfect encapsulation of all 3 of these things, right? I don't know if everyone knows about Sneakers app. Sneakers app was launched probably 5 or 6 years ago. It's an exclusive app for Nike customers to get access to their best sneakers, basically. So you sign up, and then, but it's always, you almost never win. It's basically like getting primary access to tier 1 art. It's the same thing. And you look at it, and it's like, okay, if you win, you feel great. It's like you got something that's probably worth more on the day you purchased it than what you paid for it. So it's like, that's similar to getting access to primary art. You then immediately check resale prices in these communities where it's like, if this is real, then you know what it is. I know you can prove that you got it, so you can go down that path. And then they could solve a lot of their problems, frankly, if they, instead of letting bots and people overrun the system, had token-proof style gating that verified that an individual with customer loyalty had been continuing to do that. So you can see these microcosms of where people are existing that traditional Web 2 apps could rapidly improve and capture more value. Sneakers could frankly take a lot of the StockX market share if they continue to be on the ride with the secondary markets that we're playing out as a part of it. So you can see how those all play together. And these are big businesses. This is Nike. This isn't, you know, a random upstart shoe company. This is huge money, huge opportunities that can be captured.
That was my next question. So, woo! No, I'm glad. This is going really well. This is going great. We have a few minutes. Did we want to open this up to questions?
Let's take one question.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this from others, so maybe two questions. There's no doubt that what you guys are talking about has immense value, like the digital receipt for these things. I feel like the media never talks about this stuff because we don't tell our stories correctly. I'm curious how you guys are thinking about, like, these are the stories that the mainstream media should be talking about. Like, the future of Web3 is not PFPs and, you know, like the shitty speculative market that, you know, we went through, but the future of digital receipts for all of our goods, or, you know, retrading, remarketing these things. So how are you guys helping with the PR problem in Web3?
Yeah, I think the important note here is that this shit is hard. Like, there's a lot, you know, when you come to supply chain, when it comes to authentication, when it comes to then, you know, the onboarding and trying to get new, you know, physical consumers, Web 2 consumers to understand this. And that the people who have really been building in this space have been building, you know, over the course of the last year or two. And I think that at this point in time, it's just getting going where we all feel comfortable enough within our own languages, within our own branding, and then obviously within our systems that we're proud of to be able to go out and start to, you know, pass the message. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm just now feeling like the message that I'm pushing through the media and through PR and through the opportunities I get, finally make the most sense for what we're trying to get done compared to some of the things that came out of obviously the speculative portion of 2022 and 2021.
I want to just also say that I think it's important that, sure, there was some bad, but not all. You know, and telling that story as well, and telling the highlights and the good stuff about the PFPs, and there were and are still really great things that are going on. So, yeah, I agree, being loud and being visible and telling those stories is really, really important.
I mean, for us, we let the collection speak for itself, right? So, I mean, we have the patent for the first computer. Someone wants to talk about that somewhere. It's pretty interesting. We have the fans Madonna used in the 1990 Vogue performance. We have tier 1 pieces of modern contemporary art that are going on display in libraries and contemporary museums all over the world. So we use that as our inroads. We use that as basically soft power for conversations that start with media. And then they kind of discover the Web3 of it all as they get into it. We don't lead with tokenization. We don't lead with these pieces. We use it the same way Web2 companies didn't lead with, you know, I'm using SSL as a security layer to validate your OAuth transaction when you log into a Shopify site. Like, we're using it as a core technology that we think is an underpinning for where the future goes to enable the acceleration of the business and the community and the pieces that come together. I kind of think that for a lot of people, that's going to be the way they have to wedge themselves in right now if you're building at 0 to 1 sort of Web3 crypto company, because you're going to be tied to 10 years of conversation that you were not a part of. So you kind of have to write your own story there. And that might necessarily mean that you step back from saying, hey, we're just all Web3, we're building this, blah, 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 and say, we're building a great company. These are the type of people who will use it, which is the same type of storytelling every other business did for the last 30, 40, 50 years, was consumer-first storytelling about what the problem is and how we're solving it and why we're going to be the best at it. And so that's what we've been focusing on.
I mean, I think there's tremendous challenges when it comes to public education of what we're doing, especially because we're introducing net new behaviors as to how we interact with each other and how we interact with these systems. And I think the mainstream media is not going to run stories that are not spicy, right? And I think we have to tackle education from more of a grassroots level. It's more going to be conversations at the Thanksgiving dinner, and educating our friends and onboarding them. rather than trying to push it through the media.
Agreed, agreed. Thank you so much. We are out of time.
Lindsay, thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.